I had to wait and get my COVID test yesterday in Walgreens line for longer than I would have wanted to, and it was negative. So I get to go to Bimini.
Oh, so you don't need the PCR one?
They allow a rapid. I don't know.
Good.
Listen, whatever one they say they allow is what Patty did. Maybe I'll show up there and they won't allow it. All right.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Green Room. And we have a lot to talk about, as always.
Well, we do. We have a great guest coming in. Representative Learned probably is driving his kids to school or something now, because he'll probably pick us up in the car in a few moments. So I know he's going to join us. But listen, oh, there we go. We got to go this way. We are going to talk about what happened in this last legislative session.
Oh my God!
To all of our cannabis bills, which of course hit the wastebasket, with absolutely nothing.
All the integrity of the legislators, frankly, are in the garbage.
So we'll get to it when he joins us. But let's go to what's still going on here in Sarasota County, Ruta. I know they had the meetings.
So we had a very interesting meeting about Rumble. Representative Mayo from Sarasota County decided to suddenly bring this up as it was a hot topic and getting in news media. And so he brought it up into the into the commissioner meeting, and a bunch of Ukrainian Americans and regular people were sitting in the audience. And Christian Ziegler, I'm calling you out, buddy. Disgraceful. That's all I have to say. He insulted the entire population who was sitting in the audience, stating that, in fact, if they're against Rumble, which is a Russian media propaganda outlet, that everybody sitting there was against the American flag, and he was questioning their patriotism altogether. Then he proceeded to tell everybody, Christian Ziegler did, that if you are over the age of 30, you basically have no idea of social platforms and what they are. So that was a very interesting meeting, very condescending and very inappropriate for a commissioner. And I really think if his interest is so vested in Rumble, he needs to step down. Frankly.
Right. So what on earth does the connection to Rumble have to do with anybody's patriotism? Is it, what?
I have no idea. And why?
So Rumble is a Russian propaganda platform. Essentially, right.
And they're pushing out propaganda, and
there's Representative Learned right on time.
Good morning. And our county just happened to give them $825,000 to set up shop in Longboat Key. Why? Our tax dollars going to Rumble. I have no idea why. So
listen,
anyways,
our Representative Learned, thank you for joining us at this critical time. Listen, Representative,
thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm hopping on a minute late here.
No, it's all good. I said you were probably taking your kids to school or something like that, because I know you have a lot of responsibility.
It is definitely drop-off time.
Listen, welcome back from Tally. So do I get to introduce you still as District 59 representative, or what do we call you now?
Yeah, no, I'm still the representative from District 59. I will be 69, inshallah, here after the next election with these new maps that are being proposed.
Just redistricted.
But I know we're going to have a special session. I know we're going to have a special session coming up, so we're not done yet with this year. So I guess that was the wrong way to ask the question, what are you going to be called next year? Of course, you're still our champion, and I mean it, not just in the medical cannabis space, but really for all progressive discussion. And I mean it. We're going to discuss it. But what Ruta was just talking about, and I don't know if you know about it, but I know it's pertinent to one of the last things that you were active in session that didn't go through, that you're still bitching and whining about, and we want to whine with you, was the withholding of the Russian dollars, from our pension funds, right? And Ruta was just talking about what's going on here in Sarasota County. I don't know if you're familiar with the tax dollars.
I think I was the leader in that fight, to be honest.
I know you were. I know you were.
The day after the invasion, it started with a conversation with the speaker about kind of standing in solidarity. That resulted in what I considered to be very nice words, but no action. And the one thing Florida can do that's actually tangible here is with our dollars. And we have about $300 million of a multi-billion-dollar pension fund invested in Russia. And
sounds like a lot of money to me.
It's real money, and that money is propping up Vladimir Putin and his war crimes in Ukraine. So I mean, there's two prongs to this conversation. There's one, investing in Russia right now is a terrible investment. I am
Yes.
sure we have lost a
Thousands
huge
and
percentage
thousands.
of
Mhm.
that. And two, we don't want more money going in to fuel future war crimes. So right now, there is nothing to prohibit the state retirement fund from sending more billions of dollars into Russia, looking at that as like a cheap investment. So there's both a
Looking at that as a cheap
Okay, I
investment.
have some questions here.
yeah.
As an American government entity, why on earth are we investing in foreign investments to begin with? I'm sorry, keep it home. Like that's a number one thing for any, I mean, this is a disgrace. And then come on, our arch enemy, nemesis of all times. Are you kidding me?
So
and now he's like,
you know, candidly, this bill has passed across the country in dozens of states in a completely not only bipartisan, but unanimous fashion. It is like sweeping the nation right now.
I'm telling
And
you,
the fact that Florida, one, didn't do it, and two, has not offered to do it now, because we are being called back to a special session. Within 2 hours of being called to a special session, I sent a letter to the governor requesting that divestment be added to the special order calendar. So there is no excuse. They've passed on it the first time a month ago. Now they have a second chance to get this right. And if they don't, then I would argue that they are making very clear what side they are standing on.
Yes, and that's
conversation
and honestly, that's a huge conversation for the entire population of the state of
can
Florida.
people add their voice? Can
Amazing.
people add their
I didn't
voice
know
to
this.
yours to insist that it is a part of special session? Has it been
They
accepted?
can. It's
What's the
on my
process?
It's on my Facebook page right now. Facebook.com/Andrew Learned, just like my name is here. And we've got the petition there. They can sign it.
Good.
We have a list of everybody who signed going to the governor.
Oh, we're gonna have.
Is that solely at the governor's discretion or speaker?
The speaker, the Senate president, and the governor. I have to brush up on that, because I think with a special session, I know in a special session, like that's the topics are negotiated in advance. So all of those people have a vested interest in it. I do believe the governor is the one who sets the actual priority, but it's in the conversation. So,
all right.
Because this afternoon, actually later this morning, we're at Tiger Bay and we're having the legislative update and synopsis from Gruters, from Will Robinson, from all of them. So I am going to bring this one up.
Well, hang on,
and candidly, I mean, full transparency, dozens of Republicans came up to me after my amendment failed and said, "Why didn't we do that?" Because I do think it's a bipartisan thing that everybody agrees on.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, and this is true, this is true for cannabis as well. There are dozens of rank and file Republicans who are willing to say that they support something, but then they support their leadership, which blocks it. That is the problem we have in Florida politics, which is they are all hiding behind the fact that, oh, leadership made a decision. Well, you're enabling that leadership. And until you have the courage to make a stand, like, you represent people too. You're not just a pawn of your party. And right now, there is one party that is so lockstep, like there is no daylight between them. They are all pointing at each other, yet together, they're standing with Vladimir Putin and blocking our divestment bill.
And listen, not to equate medical cannabis issues with what's going on, the genocide in Ukraine. But I'm going to lean this way, Andrew, because listen, this is my image that Don, our producer, took on. It's the garbage can with our cannabis bills, okay, in there, right? And I guess I'm so disappointed. And like I said, we're going to Tiger Bay later, and I'm going to rehearse my question to Representative Robinson, who will be there, because it was his critical committee, of course, okay, that couldn't even hear our bipartisan, we thought pre-negotiated prior to session bill. And as you know, and I want to call Representative Lerner out for the positivity that he showed pre-session of working with us doctors, right, to try to make the best changes that we felt that we could get in this session. And we had Representative Roach, who co-sponsored with you in the House, and we had my state senator, Senator Gruters, who co-sponsored in the Senate to make it bipartisan. But yet the bills were not even heard to be given a committee assignment, which the insulting thing to me, Andrew, I know you feel the insult too, and I'm not going to speak too long on this, but I got to give a shout out to Representative Drake in the negative fashion, who, when you finally got to bring up our issues in amendment form, not through committee, so Dr. Berry gets to come up and get my 30 seconds of time, which is probably what they would have given me, but I would have taken it to speak up for my patients given any committee venue available. And the fact that not one of our items hit a committee so that we could come up and speak to them was a complete insult to 700,000 now patients in the state of Florida. And when you tried to bring them up on the second to the last night, and I was watching, Andrew, very few people watch that Florida channel as much as I do. And I saw Carlos cry on the floor, okay, when he discussed his personal story. I saw Lauren Book turn heels, okay, and charge up to the floor after what seemingly her amendment passed by voice vote. And Senator Farber had to say, well, what was that all about? And if you can explain how that happens to me, please do. I know that was Senate, not House. Mm-hmm. But my point is the fact that every one of our bills with bipartisan support, okay, couldn't even get a sniff is such an insult. And my question, and it'll be shorter, at Tiger Bay will be to Representative Robinson and Gruters. How do you speak to the frustration of 700,000 constituents in the state of Florida, because that's who I represent, okay, that we have to wait another year to discuss critical issues like the resumption of telehealth, veterans card for free, 2-week card. These issues, per Drake, were laughed at by you, Andrew, were laughed at and called unfriendly. And I saw it, I heard it, and it doesn't give me a lot of hope for next year unless everybody gets out and votes.
Vote them out.
So that's my question to you. And you exist up in that atmosphere with the collegiality and the BS, okay, that you know how these people feel, but they're not standing up for their constituents. So how do you answer to that, Representative Robinson and Senator Gruters? And I know Representative Learned's got a different answer, and I can't wait to hear of your frustrations.
Well, I mean, candidly, I think your Tiger Bay is going to be very interesting because Senator Gruters, Republican Party of Florida chairman, is our Senate sponsor and totally agreed with every provision in our bill. He put his name on it and ran it, not just supported it, ran the bill. Representative Robinson was the roadblock that prevented that bill from being heard. He will point out that leadership, he did that at leadership's direction, but I, again, would go back to the point I made earlier, which is these Republicans are cowering behind leadership and enabling that behavior at the same time, right? So there is nobody to blame. At some point, you have to blame yourself, and that is what, there is a systemic lack of leadership in the caucus that's unwilling to stand up for what they believe in. And I think it's a perfectly fair question. Now, on to some of the other points. I am relatively optimistic about the future because the Republican Party is a very leadership driven entity, as I just said, and leadership will be changing. And every year, we have neutralized more and more enemies. As I said, Senator Gruters, Representative Roach, who tried to kill the marijuana bill last year, is now one of our advocates and supporting bipartisan cannabis reforms.
We still got to get that tour. I still want you and he to meet midway at the clinic. We got to get that done.
Yeah, but my point is, like, we are converting our opposition into friends. That is step one. Step two is there are staunch opponents of this that are frankly just aging out and they're gone. Term limits are taking care of that problem for us. So all cannabis people should be supporting term limits.
Cannabis term- Yeah, I am a big supporter of term limits.
But honestly, so for those reasons, I'm still optimistic about where we're going. I did find this session very frustrating. And the reality is this, cannabis was part of many bills. Property insurance, we've all had 40% increases in our property insurance rates. There are prices going up for all sorts of things. I've already talked about divestment. I had a gas tax repealer that was never heard. There was lots of good bills to help Floridians that didn't move, not because they were bad policy or they didn't have bipartisan support, but because the governor was more focused on red meat, base politics for his national presidential election. That's it. This was about running. We did an immigration bill that said that if you are a company that transports undocumented people for contract with the federal government, then you can't also have a contract with the state of Florida. Do you know how many companies that applies to? Zero companies. It does nothing. But he ran this giant press conference and ran around the country talking about how he's securing the border, even though his bill that got hours and hours and hours of endless debate does nothing.
Unbelievable.
Well, for sure. And listen, you're a teacher as well, Andrew. I know you have your tutoring, biz, and listen, to watch the teachers come up to Tallahassee to debate their concerns over we'll call it the parental rights bill.
Although everybody
Let's
at
call
the
it what it
Oscar night
is.
even
Don't
said
say
gay,
gay bill.
during the Oscars.
To me, it's once again the not answering to how the constituents obviously feel. And let's go to the solar power.
Well, I would point out, and I think it's fair to that, like Republican constituents do want these things, but that's the problem. They only care about Republican constituents and Republican primaries, because we as a Democratic Party are in many ways, because of gerrymandering, shut out of a lot of these races. Like we have no prayer in flipping these seats. I am the only Democrat who has won anywhere in the state in a district that voted for President Trump. There are 9 seats more Democratic leaning than mine that are currently either open or held by a Republican. And those are the moderate middle, frankly, of people that we need to win those seats, and we need to go on offense, because last year we lost 5 incumbents in this wave year for Democrats. When Donald Trump's name was on the ballot, we lost 5 seats because, candidly, Democrats, our volunteers, anybody activist who's watching this, like, we didn't go knock doors. We didn't go have the tough conversations. We didn't do the work that we needed to do, and we got our asses kicked. And until we fix that problem, we are going to continue to get the policy outcomes that come with it.
Do you think also, though, Andrew, like for our party, like I just always find like we're always the ones that want to take like a higher ground, and we don't punch. And the Republicans, they punch, and they punch hard, and they win. And I think as a strategy for our party, I'm so frustrated.
For the record,
why can't we
punched plenty.
You punched. I know.
and I won.
I know.
So,
thank God. That's what it takes.
This is a personal frustration of mine, but I remember the day after the election, I had dozens of phone calls from people who had great policy ideas. Oh, we need to fix this. We need to fix that. We need to do all these things. It's like, I don't know. Did you just not watch what happened last night? We just got our asses kicked. Like, where was that energy? Where was that during the campaign? Because candidly, I don't care about your policy ideas, as great as they may be, if we can't get the votes to pass them, because they are literally worthless.
Yeah.
The only way we win is if all of that energy, all the time we sitting around thinking of why it's so great to have Medicare for all, or whatever the policy is that you want, if you're not willing to put that energy into actually going and talking to swing voters, and persuading them, not yelling at them, not telling them they're wrong, but persuading them to come to your side, then you are wasting your time.
They are. And this is the thing too, because half the time, like one of my biggest frustrations, and I argued with the local party here on, was we focus so much on fellow Democrats. I don't need to speak to the Democrats. The Democrats already, they're going to vote for us. We need those swing votes in the middle, and they focus all their attention. Go out and speak, and you're speaking and you're saying it to the, you're preaching to the choir because they're all Democrats.
And that's why
there.
cannabis can be such an interesting issue. Seriously, and I got to bring up one really important thing, Andrew, that I know you tried to do this past session, was your fentanyl strip testing bill. Okay, now hang on. You and I, okay, you're a veteran. Thank you for your service. I'm an emergency medicine physician. That's what I am. Guys will tell you. That's my career. It's always been an urban myth, okay, that there's been fentanyl-laced cannabis. Never been, believe me when I tell you. Now, I can't say that anymore because now there's documented cases of fentanyl-laced cannabis. Here's what's important about it scientifically. And you know, Andrew, it is the green room, so I got to pause for a touch of science. You can't smoke a joint with fentanyl in it if the joint is already rolled up, if the fentanyl's in the cannabis, and die, because the heat will kill the fentanyl. It burns it up, doesn't get into the system. But what's happening is, and it's been documented, and I know you've seen the cases, if there's fentanyl within the cannabis flower or on the bag, when you crumble up the cannabis, and then, sorry, everybody, I kind of know these things. You lick your fingers to roll up the joint, and then you lick the joint to seal it up, is when you get the oral exposure to the fentanyl. It's happened, Andrew, here in Florida. It's a public health emergency. I'm happy to get up on any stage with you, any press conference, discuss it as an emergency medicine physician, as a public health emergency. And as a medical cannabis physician, the important thing is, and there's an important thing we're going to discuss at the very end of the show today, any restrictions that lead anybody back to the legacy market at this time is on almost, it's like a Russian roulette in a horrible way, death sentence. There are one dose overdoses. We had the 3 cadets from West Point that thought they were buying cocaine that tumbled into some fentanyl.
6, yeah.
6. And people, it was just documented. It's documented in Connecticut. It's documented down here in Florida. So there is fentanyl exposure occurring with cannabis. I would never say that in the past until it's been documented. So you and I mean it, when you're ready, I'm ready to speak with you about that very important test strip bill. Was that also voted by voice vote down and never considered as an amendment, or did that actually get some discussion?
That vote was actually, they voted that down by procedure, and then the motion to waive the rule to, which is, we've done dozens of times. That's totally a legitimate tactic. We were told if we even made the motion, they were going to kill multiple Democratic bills for the rest of the session.
And this is somebody
they were just going to blank all
for
of
the
us.
public safety of our citizens. What is going on here?
It's crazy to me. Like they oh wait, I'm sorry. I think I just confused those. The procedural one was on the Ukraine divestment. You're correct. Sorry. The fentanyl one was the voice vote, and they did vote that down, despite multiple Republicans supporting it. And I have offers from 6 Republicans right now to help co-sponsor that bill next year, because the reality is it should have passed. And also, that bill, anybody who says like, oh, it was an amendment, it was at the end, like, I don't know, that was a bill that I filed 6 months ago. It has been in the queue the whole time. That, along with all of the good bipartisan cannabis bills and all the other things, was just simply never heard. My amendment was a last-ditch attempt to save 8,000 lives from overdoses, tens of thousands more of overdoses that don't result in death, right? Like, we've got hundreds of thousands of people a year that are going through this. all a fentanyl test strip does is tell you whether or not there is fentanyl, which prevents overdoses. That's it.
So simple. Go figure. And you would think they'd want that.
And it's going to be critical.
And sorry, I have to vent about this.
No, that's why you're here. Don't you know, Andrew? That's
the chairman of the committee
here.
The chairman of the committee, who has blocked this vote for 6 months, who's also the bill sponsor that my amendment was on, stood up in debating against it, said, I don't know what the problem is. I went on Amazon and bought one today, which is a felony in the state of Florida. Like, he acknowledged on camera on the Florida channel that he committed a felony with possession of fentanyl test strips, which is something that he is at the same time arguing should be illegal for other people. What kind of world do we live in? Sorry.
You can't make it up. No, you can't make this. No, you cannot.
That is my vent of the day.
No, listen, I had mine a little earlier, but the point is, and I mean it, watching what went on in Tallahassee, and listen, I want to give a big shout out to, I know, and you can add on whoever you want to, but Carlos Guillermo Smith and Michelle Rayner and Chev Jones. I mean, I bring them up for their obvious, sexual orientation, and they're so strong in their telling other stories, and Senator Book, who told her story of abuse in her past. And I mean, people really laid it out this year, Andrew, I thought, and just the callousness of the other side with the culture wars that were going on up there, to the detriment of the citizens of Florida. Listen, let's talk special session for a second. And then we have one thing we got to just touch base on before we end, to medical cannabis patients. What do you expect in special session? We know that it's called because of what the congressional redistricting that the governor has vetoed. But I understand what open carry is something that actually looks like it's going to come to Florida, and some other things. Just give us what you think is going to come down up there.
I mean, if session wasn't enough of a red meat base politics, agenda, I mean, the special session is looking to be worse. I mean, the one thing I'm somewhat optimistic on is I'm hopeful we can get something done on property insurance. That was a huge thing that we dropped the ball on. Also, the fact that we had the Surfside building collapse, and bipartisan agreement about new ways of condo enforcement to keep our buildings safe. That died at the end. I think both of those died candidly because of these red meat issues. A little bit more time, maybe we can get them done, which we should do. But I mean, you're right. I mean, this is about Ron DeSantis running for president, and it has nothing to do with helping the people of Florida. Get ready.
Telehealth for research? I'm teasing. No, listen, I mean, it'd be wonderful to think that maybe we could slip an agenda item in. I know that's wishful thinking. One very insidious thing, Andrew, that I need to speak to before we end up. As you know, when the budget is approved for the OMU, things are slipped in, such things as the allowance for the establishment of emergency rules, right? And I know I sent you a couple days ago what we know is coming down next week, everybody. Medical cannabis patients alert. I don't want to overly alarm anybody, please.
Yes, please.
No
Thank you.
panic,
Yes.
but
So don't say too
no
much.
panic. Open your emails from the OMU. Pay attention to your medical cannabis practices. Be kind to your medical cannabis clinicians. There's been a long-awaited dose cap limits that's in statute that has never been established. The only meeting being 3.5 years ago, and numbers were never established. My suspicion is most everybody will be fine, and their numbers will fall within the state's allowed range. Until you know otherwise, nothing more or different need be done. So read, open emails, you're going to see it come out, but don't panic, everyone. I'm not happy with limits on anything for my patients, because we feel we do the education and we know what's going on. Unfortunately, Andrew, and you know this, we weren't consulted on these numbers nor the form. And we'll have to see what goes on next week. But I guess the craziness is we have an expectation that April 5th, guys, which is Tuesday, we are expecting somewhat of some changes from the OMU. So that is my don't panic update.
Yeah, because we don't need panic.
Any insight on what went on up there, Andrew, with the emergency rules making, and anything further that we can expect?
I would just say, I did see it a couple days ago, like you said. I have known this was something that the department was talking about since last summer. Fixing parts of it were in original drafts of the bipartisan bill that I had worked on with Representative Roach. Now, that was based on a very old, like a last summer version of what we are expecting now. So this is quite different. I have a lot of concerns about what's coming, and I'm happy to go through that a little bit too. But I will say, it is a regulated industry, so making sure there is a personal kind of amount that you can buy makes some sense, right? Like, so doing this, I don't think is completely outside the grounds of what seems reasonable. That said, the fact that they're doing this outside, just days after a legislative session wrapped up, before a special session where we could legislate this and make this actual law, that they're doing this by rule, which is essentially the governor, because all rules go straight to the governor. The fact that he is doing this right now without legislative approval and during an election year is, again, another slap in the face of every patient, doctor in the state of Florida that the Republican Party wants to get between you and your medicine, period. And, the answer to all of these problems is at the ballot box in November, because that is our only recourse, unfortunately. I'm a smoke it if you got it kind of guy on this. I'm a pretty libertarian, I think, on cannabis issues. And I think we need to hold them accountable.
What you are, Andrew, you're an advocate for public safety, is what you are, quite frankly. And I
like to think I'm just like a reasonable, middle of the road guy. Like, I am a former president of college Republicans turned Democrat who now holds the only Democratic seat in the state that voted for Donald Trump. So, I don't think on paper or just in reality there's anybody more middle of the road than I am. And I am still apoplectic at some of this decision making, because look, when I was a Republican, we believed in leaving people alone, letting people access their medicine without big government telling you how and when and how much and all those things that the Republicans nowadays are very happy to inject government into the most personal.
They're going into
parts of your life.
I mean, really, considering the Republican Party is supposed to be less government, it's really funny how much government has come down the throats of Floridians this session. I mean,
and now Senator Scott wants to raise taxes on 41% of Floridians. You can't make this stuff up. They have gone full circle, and all of us in the middle. I mean, I think 90% of, forget Floridians, Americans in general would say that they're socially liberal and fiscally conservative. Mm-hmm. And right now, if you're either of those two things, you should be voting Democratic, because the Republican Party, this has nothing to do with what this podcast is about, but one of the most consequential things I did this session was a stand on this new anti-business attack that was going to create new litigation against Florida's businesses. It had an $80 billion fiscal impact attached to it. It flew through unanimously through two or three committees before it came to me. And I blew it up with 6 amendments and was able to finally kill the bill. It was a speaker priority bill. But that is a perfect example of how, frankly, greed and too much power can result in one party doing something that is going to directly attack some of the most important stakeholders in the state of Florida. I mean, and on a totally unrelated issue, now you've got we're politicizing Disney. We've politicized Publix in the past. We are politicizing marijuana right now. I mean, you name it. Some of the biggest players in the state of Florida are under constant attack by the culture wars, and it's got to stop.
Well, the only thing I kind of agree and disagree a little bit, Andrew, on that one. The only reason why it's politicized is you have those donors such as Publix who donate to the Republican Party, and they do it in huge numbers. So I think with that, I have to kind of say, well, you're sticking your nose in the business of actually supporting, the governor and giving him big donations. You have to fight back, and you have to push back on Publix. I know it's like, I know they're a big player in the state, but hey, you stick your nose in the mud, you're going to get dirty,
I think the reality is the Republicans control 2/3 of the legislature. And so it is not unreasonable to expect that any company that is invested in good government is going to give 2/3 to one side, because that's who's in power right now, right? Like, I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. And I also think, candidly, these companies are aligning with business interests. The point that I'm trying to make is not what's happened in the past, what got us here, but where we are going right now. And where we are going right now is these culture wars are attacking these corporations at a rate far higher than any Democratic complaining about, like, oh, well, you gave unevenly, or like whatever. Like, yeah, okay, we had that conversation. But right now, I mean, we are taking, a tweet of a corporation and deciding that is now worth destroying it with half of America, like getting half of Americans to like unsubscribe from their Disney Plus subscriptions right now. I mean, it is a direct attack. And if we, the Democrats, aren't willing to stand up and say, like, no, we're business friendly, we support these guys. Like, if we're not willing to like be the voice of reasonable opposition, then we are letting a gigantic opportunity just pass us by. And two, we are like cowering down and just like saying that it's okay for them to do that. And we don't, as a free market capitalist country, we don't need politics and business like constantly at war with each other over culture. That's really what it comes down to.
No, it is, but I don't think you're going to take that out anytime
soon. Well,
soon.
listen, we're getting into political season.
Yeah.
We know Sunday evening, Kennedy King comes up here in Sarasota County.
We have to wrap up because
we do. I got some patience already. Hang on. We do have a ticket though, Andrew, should you so desire. Do you want to give a gubernatorial endorsement?
I have not done that. I candidly, being the only Democrat running in a Trump district, I'm very focused on my own election. It is going to be very close and very hard given the national landscape right now. So there may be a time for that. I honestly don't even know. I am focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's getting reelected. So
we need you, believe me, to get reelected. Listen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week, and Slava Ukraine.